So we are still very much in the wake of the fallout of the Anthony Joshua Dylan White rematch, and the dust has far from settled. There's still a lot of ambiguity and points of interest. Of course, we want to find out what these adverse analytical findings were in Dylan White's test, what the substance was, what's the context, all that kind of information. But I think alongside that, the most present talk is, maybe urgent if you want to use that term, is who Anthony Joshua's replacement opponent is going to be. Because, of course, the event is still scheduled to go ahead, but Anthony Joshua needs a replacement if he is going to fight next Saturday. And there's been open discussion about his team looking for a replacement opponent. And so I think the immediate names being mentioned are the heavyweights that are already on the card. So Derek Chisora, Gerald Washington, Philip Hergovich, Dempsey McKean. And from that bunch, it seems like most people are kind of jumping the gun and saying, oh, it's going to be Chisora. For whatever reason. And I don't particularly blame them because, of course, there is that story going around that David Haye was told by Chisora, I think a week ago, that this would happen. Dylan White would have this issue, be pulled out of the fight, and then Derek Chisora would be there to step up and fight Anthony Joshua, which I guess adds some validity or some weight to this situation and these claims that people are making that it will be Chisora. However, I was at work today, and a friend and a colleague of mine, we were talking about this very situation, and I asked him what he thought because he's a boxing insider. He's someone who has given me plenty of heads up on developments and fights and all that kind of stuff in boxing, and I thought I'd get his take on it, and he said with some degree of certainty that the fight wouldn't happen explicitly, that Chisora wouldn't fight Joshua next Saturday. And he pointed something out which I think most people are missing almost entirely, at least from what I've seen and heard. And that is Anthony Joshua is Derek Chisora's manager. Derek Chisora is managed by 258 Management, which is AJ's company. And I know people are probably going to have a knee-jerk reaction and say, oh, just because it's AJ's company doesn't mean he actually manages Chisora. Well, just to correct you, or at least attempt to correct you, if you go onto Company House and look at 258 Management, the only appointed individual on that profile, from what I've seen, is Anthony Joshua. And I think in that case, for all intents and purposes, Anthony Joshua is recognised as being Derek Chisora's manager. And of course, this brings in surely like talk of conflicts of interest, because that strikes me as the kind of situation which would be prohibited by the Boxing Board of Control, for example. Having your manager, who's also an active fighter, fight you as a client, as a fighter, that doesn't sit well with me. And I think surely there should be some kind of rule or regulation against that. I did have a quick scan of the rules and regulations of the British board, and I couldn't find anything. Just because I couldn't find anything doesn't mean it's not there. I'm pretty much rushing to make this video, so I really haven't done my homework, but just presenting this to you guys, and maybe you can go off and do some research yourselves. But yeah, that was a good point he raised. And as I say, I haven't heard anyone else mention that, so I want to kind of present that point, because I know Chisora said, this would happen and that he was going to be the one to step up. But, Chisora, he's a strange character. He says and does strange things, and doesn't necessarily mean he's always lying. It doesn't necessarily mean he's always telling the truth. It's probably a bit of both anyway, and maybe that was it. Maybe he did have an inkling that this would happen and then the fight would get scrapped. And he thought, he'd add his own Chisora twist, and all of a sudden, Chisora is going to be the one to step up. However, that strikes me as something that wouldn't be allowed. So, just an interesting point there. I guess we should be finding out today, from what I've seen and heard, that if there's no announcement today, then I imagine the fight's probably scrapped, and then that probably puts the rest of the card in jeopardy, which is, probably not that much of a loss in most people's eyes, because this card isn't much. But hey, there's something to think about. another question amidst already a growing pile of questions. But let me know your thoughts down below. Would that be allowed? Anthony Joshua as Derek Chisora's manager to fight him? Let me know what you think in the comment section below, people. For now, thanks for listening, and I'll catch you on the next video.